So good morning, everybody. So welcome. Glad everybody signed up for this presentation today. My name is Steve Riccobono. I'm Assistant Director for Human Resource Services at Stony Brook University. And I was asked today to talk about dealing with difficult people. I was a little confused at first because I'm not sure. We don't really have any difficult people at Stony Brook. So, just wasn't quite sure why they asked. We hardly ever use central offices services and legal advice, so it's a little strange. But nonetheless, I figured we would approach this today. I am also the lucky recipient of being the Solving Problems in the Workplace Complaint Officer for the university. So I get to hear 3,300 people complain to me on a daily basis. It's my dream job, and it's what I always thought it would be when I graduated, that's what I would do all day. And hearing them complain, calling me, stopping in the office, emailing me. Even here at the conference, they're emailing me. So it's good times. It's always good times. But I always say I have my humor. If not, I'd be hysterically crying a lot. Without further ado, I'd like to start. Kathleen and I are presenting together. And I think some of the things that I want you to take away from today's talk is learning about dealing with the difficult personalities, but also to understand some of the fine line differences between a bully and the difficult personality, because I think there's sometimes could be that where it's a fine line, they're crossing over, and we'll talk about that. And what difficult personality types that there are. I was doing a lot of research for this and looking, and there were some that listed 25 and 30, and I thought, my God, that's a lot. So I narrowed it down. I found a really great article dealing with difficult people. Good title, isn't it? And this author had listed about 4 different personality types. And I think through the 4 different personality types, some of them merge together sometimes into one difficult person, or there may be 2 of the same types I noticed as we were going through it. So, and the strategies of how to deal with these people is also very helpful because it makes a difference in how you approach it. I mean, if we look really in the dictionary into difficult, we find that, difficult is hard to deal with or get on with or hard to please. And these people at your campus. Who doesn't have any difficult people at their campus? Yeah, I thought so. We have one person on No Difficult. That's great. That's great. Is that the Utopia campus that you're there? Okay, good. And these people I know are determined probably to make life fun and difficult for everybody. And, in this session is how to deal with them and how to make sure that you're able to continue to do work, because it's either an incoming customer or it's an employee, it's a faculty member, it's a fellow coworker. There's always difficult people that we have to deal with in the course of business. So one of the first things, though, is to talk about the bullying versus the difficult behavior. And I think once you see that it can be hard to distinguish because it's usually when they're bullying, they're targeting a single person. And so it's not a whole group. Usually the difficult person is difficult with everyone. But if you notice it's focused on, just one person, and it's always, well, Kathleen, that's, why I did that. Or Kathleen, why did you, if it's just one focused person, that's when it becomes more problematic. And the signs of a bully. There are some signs that you can notice, like the talking behind one's back about one person. Instead of directly resolving the issue, there's that problem of them going behind the back and like, well, wait a second, we could have worked that out. What's going on here? So these are, fine lines of what to look for and keep that in the back of your head as you're talking about that. And I'm sure as we're going through this, you're all thinking of the different areas of that. The isolating or freezing out of a colleague from group activities that they're not included in, or you see someone sabotaging another coworker or employee purposefully, and that is definitely a sign of a bully. Refusing to be available when a colleague needs assistance, it's just not playing what I call the game fairly. It's trying to set somebody else up for failure and targeting that specific person. That's when it goes from being a difficult person into bullying. And at our campus, we have a disruptive behavior policy about that. That requires us to take action and work with our friends in labor relations to try to smooth that out somehow and work with the department. And so those are some of the initial signs. And if at any time anybody has any questions, please feel free. So the first type is the volcano. Abrupt, intimidating, domineering, arrogant. This person really is prone to making personal attacks. And Kathleen and I will put on our acting voices here, and we'll act.
I am a thespian.
Yes. This is my good thespian friend Kathleen,
Thank you.
and
Thank
she's
you.
going to be acting. I will be the bad guy, and Kathleen will be the good cop.
Yes.
So we're in a meeting. We'll set the scenario for all four of our personality types. And the volcano is the first one, and this person is always charged and ready to go with anger. There's just not, it just very easily sets off. And they intimidate most people in a meeting, and it would go something like this of, fist pounding. Kathleen, are you going to do that again in this meeting?
Ouch. So, a more diplomatic way might be for Steve to have said, I consistently have seen this in previous meetings. Last Tuesday, this Thursday, I've noticed this, that, the other thing. He could directly deal with the issue, but not be angry. When people pound on a table, right, people start calling Barbara Pell in Employee Relations at Central Office. So being careful and not using your physicality to get a point across is important. It takes control.
So the sniper, this is the person that many have seen. This goes beyond the sarcasm, and I'm not sarcastic at all. You've probably noticed. So anything about that. But this is a person that's highly skilled in being very passive aggressive, and where they take sarcasm to a whole new level. In a meeting, and they're like, "Really, Kathleen, you're going to say that again? Haven't we heard this speech 20 times before?" Thank you.
Yeah, so sarcasm, easy to use at home, don't use it at work, right? So we may be doing that with our partners and our kids, but when you're at work, sarcasm, there's no place for it. And so a better approach, of course, is to just state the facts. So good emotional health and people bringing their best selves to work will always just state the facts without a lot of emotionality. So a better way, and sometimes we have to talk to people privately about this. So if you see that in a meeting, if you see sarcasm in a meeting, it's okay for you to step outside of the meeting at some point and say, I just want you to know, you probably weren't aware, Steve, that you were actually being kind of sarcastic. And how I could tell because of the look on Kathleen's face when you said, what? You're going to do that again? Sometimes just having the guts to talk privately with people about your observations can work. And all of a sudden, when you start practicing it, what do you think happens? You get good at it. You get good at it. And then people say, well, that woman cares about me. She's interested in my professional development. She's not trying to call me out in front of people. One of the worst things that I've ever done is call people out in front of people. And I learned that about 20 years ago. What a bad idea. Somebody talked about sarcasm in this sort of sniper way, and I was the director of a program for people with mental illness, and I was talking to counselors, and the counselors were being, I thought, rude about their discussions on some of the residents, and it got to my heart, and so I called people out in a meeting and said, I don't like the way you're talking about so-and-so, I don't like the way you're talking about so-and-so, you're here to help the mission, to be, a good counselor, and it did such damage to the relationships that we all had that I'll never do it again. And I was young, so, you got to give me a little credit, but I also learned afterward that the better way to deal with that was privately, and to just say, hey, you probably didn't realize that you were being sarcastic, but I think you were, because the body language changed and the conversation changed. And that'll stop us in our tracks when somebody who we care about gives us that feedback.
Sure.
So what if you have someone who you've done what Kathleen has talked about, just approaching the person and talking with them. And you've done it several times and it
So if it's not, the approach of talking to them directly, I'll go into that later on. There's an approach to have, yes. So the next one is the chronic complainer. I think, I hear the chuckling already, because, this is the person that whines about like, oh, do we have to do this audit again? We just did it 6 months ago. Really, it didn't work last time. It's not gonna work this time. We didn't fix the process. Who cares?
So my thoughts around that would be to acknowledge the history. So you acknowledge the fact that, yeah, there's been a lot of discussions. We just heard how many Stony Brook audits there are. So sometimes you have to acknowledge the fact that the person who's complaining has got the right sort of history. And so acknowledging that, maybe even just saying, you're right, it sounds like we've had a lot of audit activity. And then move the conversation into, but what could we do differently? So you can't ever say, hey, I'm new and I don't want to hear that anymore, because that really devalues the good work that people put in place before you started or when you joined the new team. So you acknowledge the good work of the history, but then you move the conversation into, let's talk about what we could do differently together as a group, and it joins the team, it unifies.
The last but not least difficult personality type is the clam. And this is the one that is disengaged, unresponsive. You kind of get that blank stare across the table when you're talking to them, or realize you're asking them some questions throughout, and they're just either not responsive, or you get the blinking eyes that at least you know they're alive, but they're not talking to you. So
that's usually because, why would somebody be disengaged in a conversation? What do you think? They feel intimidated, they're frustrated, right? They don't agree with the direction. They're not happy with something that was said 15 minutes ago. So we want to use our highest level of emotional intelligence when we're dealing with teams and with people. And when people disengage, one way to bring them back in would be to ask them a question, right? Say, what do you think about that, Kim? Like, specifically ask, and using their name, try to get them to respond. If they're still disengaged, you're not going to say, you seem disengaged. What's going on, Teresa? That, if someone says that to me, I'm crawling under the table, because now I didn't want people to think I was disengaged. So again, using your best emotional intelligence, and you're reading the team, right, or the individual. You either wait until the end, and maybe they're just having a bad day. Sometimes people get bad news during the day, and they're disengaged. They want to be at the meeting, but it's because they just heard something bad, and instead of leaving work, they just wanted to stay there. So you got to assume the best in people, right? Assume the best, and then prepare for the worst. And of course, if it's somebody who's been disengaged now for a couple of times, you have to deal with it. So that's not behavior that's okay at work. It doesn't sustain. Disengaged individuals usually don't produce. So you need people to be at their highest level. So identifying it once or twice. If you're acting like the clam, that's okay. I was just in a meeting last week, big team, rah, rah, we're doing this, we're doing that, and I see somebody sitting in the corner with their coat on, looking like this. And I'm like, whoa, I have done something to offend this person, but I didn't. The person was just having a tough day. Sometimes you just got to let it go. So that's how we deal with the clams.
The clams, it sounds like a good rock group, the clams. So who changes? And this goes back to Barbara's question. You've tried to approach it with dealing directly with them, saying, hey, this is the feedback. Sometimes you'll get the pushback. Sometimes you won't. Sometimes it'll be just a shrug, and then you'll see it consistently. But sometimes we can't ask them to change who they are, because they may be that persistent, constant complainer. But what you could do for yourself, and I've seen it in other areas, is you could change the way you react to their reactions. Because they're looking, usually, the complainer or the volcano, they're feeding off of your reactions. So one of the things is to change the way they're talking, or the way, not the way they're talking, the way you're talking to them, the way you're approaching, like Kathleen had suggested before, especially the volcano. They're reacting, they're exploding. You don't need to react and explode, because that just adds fuel to their fire. That's what they're looking for. I've had many meetings where there was a counterpart who was very inflamed and, just agitated, and it wasn't worth it, and I wasn't going to feed into it. And you just try to remain as calm as possible. I know it's sometimes very intimidating. There was a meeting that we were in that there was, several of us in the room. We were all making a decision, and one coworker said to another person something very, it was an attack on their, well, oh, you don't do it that way, that's not your area. And the person looked at them and said, you need to stop, because I'm not going to be spoken to that way. If you continue to speak that way, then this meeting is done, and then we will just work out, and I'll walk out, because I'm not going to stand for this, and this is the last time that you're going to speak to me like that. Am I understood? And although it was calling them out in the meeting, the person had been that volcano, and you could see it was almost like the light bulb moment came on to them to say, oh, okay. So sometimes your reaction has to change and not, feed their reaction, unless they get different responses than they're always used to. If, they're looking for the intimidation, if it, somehow they're feeding off of that intimidation, they're feeding off of that sarcasm or the complaining. If they're the complainers, it's, okay, well, John, so you said this didn't work in the past few times. So let's talk about possibilities. What kind of plan would you like to put in place to solve the problem? Because you said the other one didn't work. So I'm so happy to hear that you didn't think it worked, but I'm looking for, your opportunity to tell us, what can we do to fix it, to move on to this? Because, this is something that I know we're concerned. We've been trying, 2 years. We've been trying to make this work, and it hasn't. So let's hear some great ideas, because I know you're aware that it doesn't work. So try to, give us. Because that's the way it's the best approach is to change how you respond to them, and to make sure that you take that personality and sort of reverse it. So has anybody at your campus, have you seen some of these different types, want to share experiences, how you have handled or not? Yes. Yes. Do you have a volunteer that can bring a microphone over? Oh, okay.
So yes, I've experienced being intimidated and tried to change my approach with an individual. It hasn't always worked. And so I walk away now because I won't be spoken to or disrespected or, so I guess that's what I do not need a mic.
We're being videoed, we're being recorded.
Oh, okay. Do I have to repeat that? So I have been the recipient of behavior, being made to be intimidated or bullied, and I used to react to it, and now I have learned to walk away from it. I say what I have to. I make my point, and if they do not accept, and I'm being nice about it, I'm not being mean. Like I'm approaching someone because it's what I need to do, and if it's not received the way I had expected it to be received, instead of trying to stand there and defend what I'm telling the person, I tell them the conversation is over and I walk away. I've also tried to mediate between other employees that have experienced that as well. Sometimes it works, and sometimes it just never will work, no matter what you do to change your behavior. Some people are just intent on making you miserable.
Okay. Anybody else?
Or other scenarios that we can talk about.
Your side choice. Yep.
Okay, so Melissa just described, sometimes you have some choices. So doing nothing is okay, but, that doesn't ever really work in the long run. So thinking about it, waiting on it. I know I give myself, and I teach people this, 3 business days. So if you're having a tough conversation on a Tuesday and it still stays with you by Friday, have a follow-up conversation. It's a really humane way to just stay connected with your colleagues. And this works up the org chart and down. So, you know, clearly it's okay for you to talk to your boss too, right? So if you and your supervisor are having a conversation on a Tuesday and she thinks that the conversation is over because you've talked it through, what she's probably failing to realize is that the conversation just began for you, right? So now you're driving home white-knuckled. I hate her. I hate this place. And so we've all had those days. And so it's really a good practice. You go back to your boss within those 3 days and say, look, do you have 15 minutes? You gave me some feedback on Tuesday. I've been thinking about it. I want to round it out for you. I want to tell you what was going on that day. And it really is a good way to just kind of keep the relationships, you know, sort of on even keel. And it allows you to have some say in what's going on. Okay? So doing nothing for me will never be the right answer. Yes?
What would you suggest to go through that chain of events?
Yep.
People, and it's still, no one is going to be helpful or it's not going to get any better. Where would you suggest then we should go?
So the question is, so then you try that approach, right? So you
Straight down the chain.
you get rid of the knees and the big throat, you know, bump you have, and you go and you talk to somebody directly. And then, and behavior doesn't change. Well, I mean, for me, sometimes it takes a couple of, you know, people bonking you on the head for you to realize that you're causing issues. But I mean, if it continues to be a problem, obviously in your campus you have HR, employee relations people, supervisors, a chain of command. But the reality is, if you've ever been on the other end of this where you've done something, isn't it terrible how 6 people know about it before you do? Because that's really our natural tendency, is just to tell a bunch of other people about how Steve wronged me. And it's the healthy research foundation employee that can actually go directly to Steve first, regardless of your hierarchy. To be able to say, you know what, Steve, in that meeting last week, you said a couple things that really bothered me because I was the lead project trainer on Oracle, and you said the training wasn't good. I don't know if you realize that, but I took that personally. So I could tell 6 other people who will then just look at me and think the same thing, geez, Steve ought to know that, or I could just deal with him directly. And if it doesn't get better, if he does it again at another meeting, then maybe I should talk to somebody else about it. But I'll bet you in your life, you rarely go directly to the person. That is like the tip of the week, is that if you were in a therapy session, I'm just going to give you a little hint. The counselor would tell you, have you talked to the person? And we get such agita over being direct with people about issues. So when you're dealing with difficult personalities and difficult people, I mean, who wants to do that? I mean, you'd rather go to the dentist than have to go talk to the person who's mean in a meeting. But the reality is, if you believe that people can change and you believe in the spirit of development, then maybe something could get better between Steve and you in a meeting. So just think of it that way. Walking away, I think that's a great idea, especially if somebody's intimidating you or intimidating a bunch of other people. But call it out. We're all research administrative staff, right? We have a code of conduct, an ethical responsibility to make sure that if we see something wrong, we say something about it. So, you know, not that long ago, somebody was in a meeting and used a slur and probably didn't even realize that, you know, from their perspective that it was a slur. But we don't let that stuff go. We don't sweep things under the rug. We're a learning organization. We call people out on that, and we say privately, I just want you to know that when I heard that, it had some racial overtones that you may not be aware of, but it's not okay here. And we're all responsible that way. And imagine if we spent our time at work being direct with people and in a sort of a safe space, how much healthier and happier we'd all be at work because we were all doing it. So I have faith that we can continue it. So changing your attitude, like Steve said, you know, maybe you're not going to be able to get the person to change, but maybe your reaction to it can change. So we've all had those meetings where people are the volcano, where they're coming in all agitated, and they don't realize it, but lends itself to you spiraling upward. So I always say that's when you're your calmest. I mean, that's annoying. My husband can't stand it when I do that, but you know what I mean. Somebody's coming in, they're angry, they've got something to say, heads are gonna roll, and then you just say, well, why don't you take a minute and then we'll talk about that, in 5. And that's a far better approach than spiraling upward with them, because especially when you work in the fields that we do where people are coming into your offices, like raise your hand if people come into your office or your work area with a complaint. Okay, everybody. So I always say I don't want to be the haggard, weathered HR person who's like, laying on my desk in a pile of sweat. I want to be the person who is actually ready to hear the issue and can help people by refocusing it and having them manage the issue. And so then you bring it back to the person and you say, geez, Tracy, that sounds like a difficult situation. Come back to me in 3 days after you've talked to so-and-so. So the accountability goes back to the person with the problem, because especially in human resources, if we held on to every issue that we saw, we wouldn't be able to work. It's too overwhelming, right? So it's important it's like my favorite line is to say, well, how are you going to manage that? You bring it back to the person, okay? And then so changing our behavior would include, like Steve said, just being ready for it and not letting it kind of get you. This is just work, right? So you're not sitting in a chair getting chemotherapy, right, which I have, so I know what that feels like. It's not the same thing as having difficult conversations with employees. We can do that, right? We can do all this. And so I think the next slide, is ours, too. Oh, did I hit it wrong, Steve?
Let's just use the arrow, okay.
Okay. Okay, this one too, I'm just going to briefly go through free yourself. I love this. Steve and I talked about this last week. So, changing your attitude and behavior forces the difficult person to learn differently and ways to deal with you. So, don't try to change the difficult person. That's really hard to do. It's more likely that we'll do it ourselves. Don't take it personally. And so, you hear this a lot where people are saying, it's just business, it's not personal. It's hard not to take it personally, but remember, everybody's dealing with something that day, and it may be work-related, it may be home-related, so don't get all riled up and make it ruin your day. Just give it a day and check back in with people. You might want to set some boundaries. I think, like Melissa said, if you're going into a situation where you know the person's crabby and going to maybe be intimidating, you might want to start right off by saying, I only have a few minutes, and I'm hoping to make this productive. What would you like to do? And you put it back on them. How would you like to spend this next 15 minutes? And it gives them a chance to sort of follow your lead. Acknowledge the person's feelings. So that's an important element when it comes to people having behavior that we know is predicated by some feelings they have. Don't get too caught into it, right? You're not the counselor. Sometimes I have to say to people, I actually can't handle what you're describing. I think you should think about EAP. Most of us have got EAP. It's a perfect thing to say to somebody because you're acknowledging that they've got some issues, but it's not really work-related enough for you to be able to manage it. Empathy works too. Hey, I've been there. I know how you feel. What kind of things could we do differently together? Hold your ground. So I have to do this in team meetings because it's really easy for us to kind of go off to the side and maybe spend a little too much time on the personal. We're all busy, and it's hard to stop the conversations when people want to be, kind of familiar with one another and start talking, but sometimes that can get in the way of you finishing a project or a topic, so you might have to say, if it's all right with everybody, we're going to continue on with the agenda. And you see what I'm saying? It's just planful talk. It's nothing that's like so... I didn't need a degree in, clinical psychology to figure out that this is just between you and me. It's just people. And we can usually de-escalate this. Use fewer words. So I really think this is important. If you're getting ready to have a difficult or a crucial conversation with somebody, on a Post-it note, write the 5 things you want to say. What we tend to do is over-talk. And then we start getting trapped into things that we've committed to or we're saying because we want the other person to feel good. oh, well, maybe we'll change your merit thing, or, I mean, we just get all crazy. What you want to do is if you're going to have a conversation, the 5 things you have put down on a Post-it note and you've practiced. So when you rehearse the conversation with somebody, then you're much better shape to deal with some of the fallout or the emotionality that they have. And when you're dealing with difficult people and these folks need you to sort of be on top of your game, if you're rehearsed, you're on top of your game.
So I just wanted to tie it all together. Really, in short, knowing the difference when someone is being difficult versus the bully, and I think most of you seem to be aware of that. The bullying is the more pointed. It's not it's not just the snide remarks in a meeting, but it's the constant. You notice that everybody else, all of a sudden you're the target. And that's more the bullying, so to notice that. And even with bullying, it's not something that you should try to handle, something you should go to seek to your HR person or labor relations person to handle that, because that's something that isn't appropriate in the workplace. I know that, like I said, at Stony Brook, we have the disruptive behavior policy that pretty much says we're not going to tolerate someone who is not going to, play well in the sandbox and be disruptive in a meeting and, making their coworker feel uncomfortable by comments or things that they're saying. And so, I would leave it up to the HR folks to kind of help you with strategies of, either them dealing with them directly to say, what you've been saying to this person is not appropriate and it needs to stop. But also the other advice too, to the other end, the extent of it is, it may not rise to the level of being a bully. It may rise to the level of just, like Barbara said, it's not that, your approach to directing them may help. Sometimes it may not. And then that's when you have to step back and say, well, how can I change? How am I kind of feeding into this person and kind of helping them with it? What do I need to change to do so that I can get a different reaction from them? And that often works.
Yeah, I just wanted to say something. Someone once said to me, are you looking in the mirror or are you looking out the window? So sometimes we don't really look at ourselves. And so the difficult person may not even realize how they're coming off. So when you bring it to their attention, so I kind of think of that sometimes. Am I really looking at myself or am I looking around and
That's a
taking
great point.
inventory?
So we'd like you to just break off into your tables just for 5 minutes, and you're all sitting with each other, and because we have about 10 minutes left, so.
Yep.
Break off into your tables and just talk amongst yourself about a difficult situation, either that we've described or one that you've worked in before, and then we'll reconvene at the end. Thank you. You have 5 minutes.
I would still like to see if we can show that video.
Yeah, I don't know how they can do it.
Move that mic down to the speaker.
They'll let us do it. I mean, they're recording this as you try it.
Such the rebel on her.
It's not, but we can get it, can't we? Oh, yeah.
Yep.
All right, so then what do you think where's the speaker on this?
It's just that hard to confront people though. I mean, sometimes it's difficult, especially if they can get nasty. It's hard.
So, right, I think it's right here.
It's just, there's all this pressure, you know? And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me. And I could just feel it, like literally.
Should work. Okay. At worst, I could just move it closer to the speaker, right? Fine. Where's the microphone?
Oh, for that?
It just goes on and on.
Why nobody else?
I don't know what he.
I don't know. I'm gonna be concerned when I get to see the news from Binghamton University. You got some plastic cases there going on, foaming at the mouth.
I find the worst one I got was with effort reporting, the new effort reporting.
ESERT?
Yeah. And you know, this one professor, I would not say his name because Mike is on, but I mean, he berated me. I mean, screaming and carrying on that he wasn't going to play my blank games. I mean, it was like that. I won't speak to him to this day. When I see him, I do turn my back. But it's not mine. It's not my game I played. It's Central Office.
That's the program we use now.
Yeah.
It's not your choice. That's
And I get that from other ones also, because it is an inconvenience for them. I understand that, but I don't know how to deal with them. when
yeah, they're tough.
Yeah, I don't.
I mean, that's part of their that's part of their process. I mean, they have to certify the effort, and this is the program we use. There's no choice. I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah.
It's not an option.
But as you know, as a administrator, you know, what do you say back to them when they're being crazy?
I mean, it's the policy. It's the Research Foundation policy to use the ESERT program. Is basically what it is.
Within the office, I won't say.
I run into problems with people that are overpaid and they pay when the year crosses. And then what happens, I can't get the federal and state taxes, you can't reduce their payment by that. They have to go and, well, we don't give tax advice, but so they have to go to either a tax accountant or go to the IRS and get how they need to file their taxes to get that money back. So we ask them for the net payment minus without those taxes deducted, which could be a substantial amount of money. And they come to us and they say, we don't understand, you didn't give me a corrected tax statement that reflects that. Unfortunately, that's not our rule, that's the IRS's rule. So, I said you have to go to a tax accountant and you have to find out how you need to to go forward, and they don't like that answer, you know, and they just keep answering me the same question. Well, let me phrase it this way. You know, they keep changing the question, but the
Okay,
question
everybody.
is always the same, and the same answer.
Hello?
I'm not able to change, you know, so it's unfortunate, and
This thing on?
I didn't cause the problem, but
Okay.
I'm kind of the one that has to answer to it, so it's a tough one.
That's on.
Because my
Hello?
name's at the bottom of the letter.
So,
It's all you, Bob.
okay, so if
Rob.
we can get everybody's attention, we just want to
Tom, with the
get one
foaming
or
of the
two
mouth, I think
people
that's a really
to provide us with 1 or 2 tables to give some feedback about your discussion, and then we have a quick video to show to close everything out. It's one of my favorite and Kathleen's favorite videos that we like to use for some of these. So who would like to go first with a microphone? Do we have a microphone to give?
Can we use this table here or Tom? And
No, you got the microphone at the table, so guess what? You're first.
maybe
How did you know we had a mic? So we were talking about a PI who we dealt with, and so about a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, he was really he was kind of a sniper because he would constantly say, "What's wrong with you people? You know, you can't do things right." And when he spoke, he would actually foam at the mouth. He was
no
that.
one likes a foaming sniper.
Yeah. Yes. It's like a foaming cobra sniper, foaming at the mouth.
It's rabies. I'm told it's
Rabid
rabies by-
PIs. It's a new level.
So, but you know, he was a PI, and you know, we were in a position, you know, to answer his questions, and we wanted to, you know, give him the best service we could, and that was a difficult position. But we were hoping that opportunity wouldn't continue. Well, it turns out that 2 years later, this PI did not get tenure, and so now he's no longer affiliated with Binghamton, and he does have research that has to finish up. And so now he's coming into our office, and he's changed to be the chronic complainer, because no matter what calculations we make to calculate his biweekly and his effort, he's just challenging. Well, Lisa Gilroy said it's 14%. I calculated 24%. You calculate 22.3%. What is it? and I can see where I might be making calculations wrong based on using a summer salary calculation as opposed to being a regular employee. So I can see where I might be making a mistake. But I want to talk to Paul and Lisa, and now I've had to tell him, well, Paul's in the Caribbean, and Lisa and I are here, so you'll have to wait. He says, "Why I've got to report my effort. How can I report effort on a federal grant correctly if you're not calculating it correctly?" And I said, "We're going to work that through." But it takes patience in his case.
Thank you. Is there a microphone someplace else? Okay, good. We'll do one more here. Thanks, Liz.
No problem. So this is loud. My scenario is that I'm a supervisor now. So the person that I supervise is someone who's been at the college for 30 years or so. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of times when I try to tell her to do something or ask her to do something or ask for a response, I just get the stare back at me. No response, no nothing. Or if she doesn't want to do something, it'll just end up back on my desk with nothing done or addressed or anything like that. So I know probably it's just a lack of assertiveness on my part to deal with it, but she's also retiring in a year, and so I think I was looking for permission to just leave it alone and not do anything. But my good colleagues here have said that's not okay, because I won't learn anything from doing that either, and even if she doesn't change, I will still have that experience of being assertive and being a good manager and supervisor and learning those skills, and possibly just getting a little bit of reprieve from the stares for the next year. So, anything you wanted to add to that? Or? Okay.
Thank you. So this video is about communication. So Viking, I'm assuming we can't turn the lights a little? Can we? Just, it's easier to see, I think. We dim the lights a little bit.
it's just, there's all this pressure, you know? And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me. And I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head. And it's relentless. And I don't know if it's going to stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever going to stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I mean, I'll bet if we got that out of there...
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing...
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
See, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See, you're
out.
not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just, sometimes it's like there's this achy, I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
Yeah, that sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Oh, come on. If you would just...
Don't.
Try to see things my way. Do I have to keep on digging till I can?
We love absurdity. So.
Yes.
Okay, so now you got your evaluations. You can leave them here. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.